Hello and welcome to yet another round of the East African debate, focusing this time round on trade and industrialization. We are in Kigali, Rwanda, and we'll be trying to understand how can East African economies leverage on trade and industrialization with obvious focus on Kigali, Rwanda's economy. Joining me this morning, my esteemed panelist, on the panel is Francois Kanimba, the Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry for the Republic of Rwanda. Also, we have the only lady on the panel today, Busisiwe Legodi, Chief Executive Officer at CIMERWA Limited. Last but certainly not least, Hannington Namara, Country Director for Trademark East Africa. My name is Bonney, Tunya, and this is CNBC Africa. Gentlemen and lady, I'll start off with a few statistics that are obviously not so good. Focusing on Rwanda, the country exports about a value of 83 billion francs worth of goods outside to whichever country that we may talk about. But the import number is even baffling, 133 billion worth of import get into Rwanda. This is obviously not balanced. This is obviously not good, if I may say that. So I'd like to start with the Honorable Minister. What did these figures, what sort of feeling do you get when you look at this trade imbalance? Because it's not just unique for Rwanda, it cuts across the East African region. But what are your thoughts about such numbers?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank CNBC for bringing such a panel here to talk about trade deficit in Rwanda and the other issues around the economic development of the country. Right. Trade deficit is an issue for any developing countries, apart from those countries who enjoy huge natural resources, which can facilitate to get a quick, huge amount of foreign exchange reserve from exporting commodities. Many developing countries generally run a trade deficit, but the way we have to look to this, we should not be frightened by the trade itself. The most critical point is to understand how the trade deficit is financed. And in the longer term perspective, it's very important to understand the dynamics in the economy and how maybe over time the trade deficit is going to be bridged. So in the case of Rwanda, you know, Rwanda, when you look at the trend of our export, surprisingly, you will be impressed by the performance. In the last, let's say, the last 10 years up to 2013, the growth of our export was quite very good, right, in the range of 20–25% per annum. We were not yet to our EDPRS or Vision 2020 targets, but the trend was good. The last couple of years, we have been affected by serious exogenous shocks, like the commodity price crisis. This is a global phenomenon, but also some instability in the region has negatively affected the exports of Rwanda.
In a sense of your introductory remarks, and where you see it as Trademark, because your job is to facilitate trade in this region. And this is a figure that I'm sure you've seen across the East African countries. Give us your take as regards to this imbalance.
Thank you very much. I wish also to thank CNBC for hosting us. From a trademark standpoint, our role is to facilitate trade, but obviously with the aim of increasing it. And in fact, when we set off in about 4 years ago, we set ourselves a target to actually increase the intra-regional trade by 25%.
Right.
Now that presupposes many things. Like the minister just insinuated that you maintain the political stability, that you don't have temporary shocks. But nonetheless, we've seen a growing trend in intra-regional trade and exports, to that matter.
Right.
So we've set up what I may call the backbone of trade. We've aligned business environment issues. We've worked on policy items to ensure that movement of goods, for example, within the region is not hampered. We've worked on issues to do with logistics and making sure that that trade background or backbone is actually in place. Right. Now, the challenge that remains, of course, is how do we then ensure that we continue to grow or grow to the numbers that each country has set in their development targets. Right. Now, particularly for Rwanda, I know that there are a couple of policy items that have been passed on. There are also initiatives that are ongoing to introduce to make sure that, at least from an industrialization and production point of view, right, we participate actively in that trade and reduce the trade deficit that the minister talked about.
All right. Madam CEO, you obviously contribute to trying to level these numbers with the exports, but in a way also on the other direction. As a private entity playing in this market, CIMERWA obviously has a big role to play in the East African market as far as trade is concerned and development. Give us a sense of the numbers that we're talking about today, this imbalance, and what does it mean for a player like yourself?
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for giving us an opportunity here to come here to CNBC. To me, when I look at Rwanda, I mean, the minister has indicated the growth that has happened. Unfortunately, due to circumstances that we have no control over, that's when our export dropped. I see Rwanda as a country that has got a capacity and the capability to produce high-quality products, right, which can be exported. That's the first thing, because it's already happening, but it's not yet there at the level that would like it to be. Right. That is, it's happening. That
right. So there's some good work. We're just
there's some good work
yet.
Already, yes. Right. It's not to say there's a deficit, nothing is happening. So it's something that we need to grow and make sure that it goes beyond where it is. As CIMERWA, we currently, as you know, that we have just commissioned our plant. Right. Our plant is running now. We are producing high-quality construction cement, which means now there is no need to import as much cement as we imported
from
before.
Kenya.
Yes.
Right.
So the locals can start buying the local cement, because cement is the second highest deficit creator, because we are taking the biggest forex from the country when we import cement. So if we can reduce that deficit of cement coming to the country, then it will help with the forex. Right. Because as CIMERWA, we committed to the government that 30% of our production will take it to export, right, so that we can bring some forex. Right. Yes.
Interesting. Mr. Minister, Madam Legodi brought a very interesting point about getting local people to believe in their products, and I'm sure this is right on your alley with a very huge campaign that is built in Rwanda. Absolutely. How do we get our people to be proud about our own products? Because you'd assume that by now it would be obvious that a Rwandan consumer would go to the market and want to buy goods made in Rwanda. Why is it that we need such a campaign to get our people to buy our own?
That's a very important question. In my view, there are two problems you have to address through this campaign. The first one is the mindset. Right. It's very unfortunate in developing countries you have such a culture where people continue to believe that products from outside have always something superior to the products made within the country. This is a reality. There are many cases, even the cement you have been talking about, this is a very high quality product, but still, if you go out there, you will be surprised. People continue to distribute.
Because there's an issue of quality, and that's, I think, why someone would want to import from a different source market.
That's the second point I'd like to highlight. Right. During this campaign, we realized that our entrepreneurs still have a very serious weakness. The culture of competitiveness is not yet there, even if when you have high quality products, the way you package the products, the way you market the product is very, very important. And we want to take advantage of this campaign, which will be rolled out on a whole year until December 2016,
right,
to educate people. And to help them even necessary where they can really improve the marketability of their product with relation to their competitors which are in the market.
Right. Let me just get a bit more on the Made in Rwanda campaign, because it's a campaign that I know represents a lot of efforts in the East African space. When we're talking about promoting local, is it just, well, there's a showcasing, but what are the efforts being made to make it easier for local producers to not only produce here, but to produce at a price that is affordable? Because the other reason is that most of us don't buy local because local is expensive.
Well, I will not agree with you that local is expensive. We conducted a study a couple of years ago on a strategy to recapture the domestic market. And we came out with a list of potential products. Once supported really to take their local market share according to the potential, the country can save on an annual basis something around $450 million on our import bill. So the purpose of the Made in Rwanda campaign is exactly to find ways how to achieve this potential, which has been actually found out through this study. And when you look at the products you are talking about, the cement is an example. The cement is an example. I have no doubt at all that now Rwanda is going to save something around $50 to $60 million on an annual basis, simply because now the expansion of CIMERWA, the investment, the necessary support by the government to help them really to establish again their market share will happen.
Interesting.
We have other sectors. If we, in the food industry, for example, let me take an example of rice. Rwanda is investing very heavily to grow our rice, and since during the last 3 years, we have been investing heavily, the Ministry of Trade and Industry working with the Ministry of Agriculture to develop the domestic rice value chain, to make sure that when you go to different shops, you can see the Rwandan rice, the quality actually in some of the cases, even the quality is higher than the rice imported from Venezuela.
Let me just bring in Madam Legodi again on this issue of quality, because there's a cost aspect. A lot of local producers would charge the price they do because of the cost of production, and we'll come back, Minister, on the role of government in this. But give us, from your experience, what are the practical measures that would ensure that producers like yourself are producing quality products that can compete globally, but also at a price that will allow them to sell locally to the local market? So, I mean, how then do you ensure that, one, you're producing good quality, but also the price is not too high?
Yes, thank you. Yes. You are very right. There are some few things that needs to be considered. Rwanda is still, especially on industrialization, we are still a baby. We are still growing. And if you look, we get some raw materials local, but some of the raw materials we need to import. That, as the minister says, is about the mindset change. It doesn't mean we cannot work hard to have such raw materials made in-house. Because some of them is things like, example, I'm wearing this suit, it has been made in Rwanda, but the cloth was imported. What will stop us to open a cotton factory to make a cloth around here? That is the thinking. Now it's a long term, it can't just happen. For cement it's different, because we have got other raw materials like gypsum, which don't exist in the region. That's where now the government helps with their policies of regionalization, where it can make us get that gypsum at a reasonable price here. Which is already started, because government want to see the local economy growing. But until everything is like under the one basket and every regional government understand the benefit of this, we'll still see as though our Rwandans' products are expensive.
Right.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, because as well, you can imagine transporting them from where they come from to here, it's far. But now we've got that one corridor system that is working now. It's giving us a benefit because now the product can arrive quickly. And now Rwanda has looked as well on this rail line system. It's going to make our product arrive cheaply, our raw materials.
Right.
Because now I can put like a full load for the whole year of gypsum. I will not need trucks. It means it drops the operation cost.
Right.
Yes.
Let me just bring in Hannington. Your job is to help government in doing what Madam Legodi is talking about. Yes. How do we manage costs as far as manufacturing is concerned? Because I know we'll go back to what our governments have been trying to do, and it's very impressive work. But from where you sit as an enabler of trade, what are some of the quick gains as regards to ensuring that producers like CIMERWA and other players in this market are able to do that in a favorable environment?
Yeah, good. I think that's a very important aspect of the trade itself, and as it relates to the cost of doing business.
Right.
They are quick wins that government of Rwanda or governments in East Africa in the space that we operate in as Trademark, working with them that do not require a lot of investment that have been done. For example, the regionalization policy that Madam Legodi is talking about is how do we create one market,
right,
common customs territory here, so that at least the issues, the elements that would increase the cost of doing business in the region are brought down. And
right,
all you need there, all these countries needed was to just harmonize policy, remove barriers that doesn't require any investment on behalf of these governments.
Right.
In any case, it is actually a saving for them.
Right.
Now, heading forward, how do we ensure that the logistics sector actually also becomes efficient in supporting these industries like CIMERWA, for example? If they have been importing gypsum and getting gypsum from 2 containers from Mombasa to Kigali has been taking 10 days. In fact, as a matter of fact, it used to take 26 days getting containers from Mombasa to Kigali. Now, bringing those days down to an average of 6 to 8 has a cost attachment to it and has an efficiency attachment to it.
Right.
So CIMERWA can now turn around 10 times as opposed to what they used to do because of the hurdles in inefficiencies in the logistics and transport sector.
Right.
Now, those have been quick wins. There are structural issues that remain that need to be worked on. For example, the cost of energy, the cost of expensive skilled labor that we can, and I know that these nations have actually working on serious initiatives to improve that and bring down the cost of accessing those inputs into the industries or services sector. Right. From where we stand as Trademark, we see the government of Rwanda particularly, that because I work here, on the right track, undertaking or tackling the hardcore items, whether policy or investment related, and supporting the private sector so that they can at least buy down that risk of establishing and providing and producing goods that need to be exported.
I see the minister agreeing with you after you gave him that vote of confidence. Minister Kanimba, there have been very impressive efforts out of the Rwandan government. The EDPRS, the special economic zones is obviously another runaway success. Give us the thinking behind this and how these initiatives are meant to work to ensure that the environment is favorable for producers.
Oh, thank you. That's a very important question. As you know, Rwanda is a landlocked country. And when you read through our vision, even EDPRS, we have a longer term vision to transform this place into a regional trade and communication hub. So for this to happen, there are a number of key programs which are creating the synergy coming together. The first one is exactly what Hannington has been describing, the trade logistics.
Right.
Trade logistics is a key focus currently for the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We have developed a comprehensive trade logistics strategy. The purpose is really to link Rwanda to our neighboring countries to facilitate cutting down the cost of trade across the region. And I'm very happy to report that some of the key components of this strategy have now started to be implemented. You may have heard about the establishment of Kigali Logistics Platform, a big project which is now under implementation with a strategic partner, Dubai Port, where we are going to create a dry port in Kigali with a big inland container depot, which will increase significantly the turnaround of international trucks, because a truck coming from Mombasa or Dar es Salaam will just come, offload the containers, load empty containers, go back immediately without any delay. In the past, such trucks used to spend even 1 month, 3 weeks in Rwanda because there was no way they can offload very quickly and go back. You can't imagine how such kind of facility can have an impact in reducing the cost between Mombasa and the Kigali for international transport, who can make 5 tours to the port per month instead of just 1 or 2. This is an example. We also are looking how to unlock the huge potential we have to export horticulture products, because this country has a huge potential in fruits and vegetables to export, not only in the region but in the faraway market like in the Middle East, Europe. But so far, this potential has been inhibited by lack of agro-logistics, which can facilitate the transport from the farm up to the market. Now, there is a program which is going to run from this year to establish a number of agro-logistics centers. Agro-logistics centers which will be linked through a cord track, which are going to facilitate the transport of products from the agro-logistics centers to pack houses, which are being also constructed around the Kigali International Airport. These will facilitate the taking off of export of horticulture products. At the same time, we are engaging different airlines who are serving the Kigali International Airport to see how we can bulk purchase space in these airlines to facilitate exporters of vegetables and other perishable products to have the space without really struggling.
So it's obviously a very cross-cutting project.
Exactly.
Hannington, let me just bring you back on this. The minister has touched on a very important issue about the efficiency. Let us talk about the cost of inefficiency, because you've mentioned the reduced travel time between Mombasa to Kigali, which has obviously been made possible by the Northern Corridor integration projects. But there are so many other areas of inefficiency. Talk about the bureaucracy, the numerous unnecessary licenses that we have to pay on the road, the roadblocks and all those things. Just in terms of statistics, because I know Trademark has done a lot of work in this, give us an understanding of what is the cost of all these inefficiencies that we see around.
Good, thank you very much. I think we need to look at it from the corridor perspective. What Trademark does, we do a lot of corridor diagnostics and look at the cost drivers. Where are they? Some are in form of policy restrictions, others are in physical barriers, others are in lack of infrastructure, others are in. So we look at all those cost drivers across the corridor, because trade happens, we have to move goods and services from one point to the other. So for example, you've seen us work on borders and making them one-stop border posts that, there's no need for trucks to park 7 days on a border waiting to be cleared. Now, if you compute that in terms of cost, it will be quite high on the investors, on the truckers themselves, but also in terms of the inefficiencies. Can we do better with what we have? When here in Rwanda particularly, I'll give an example of a project with the customs department here, the Rwanda single window. To date, clearing agencies can clear goods online.
Right.
They need not to wait. If you had been here about 4 or 5 years ago and you went to a place called CIMERWA down here, you'd have seen hundreds and thousands of people moving around with files and inefficiencies. We've just concluded an evaluation of that project we put in to help modernize and leverage IT to clear goods. It has reduced the time it used to take to clear goods inland here from about an average of 4 to now 1 day. The estimated cost of that inefficiency that used to be there that has now become a saving to private sector or the clearing agencies and the importers is about $80 million.
Which begs the question, why did it take us so long to get here?
Sometimes it's a gradual process, I would imagine.
Right.
The event of IT was not to this region until recently. But also taking the fact that the leadership of these nations, of Rwanda, for example, recognizing that this has to be done. And the political will and the buy-in of these governments, of these reforms, has actually now yielded into that. Your question of why did it take so long, there's always the right time for everything.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'd like us to take a quick break.
Yes.
But you're watching the second round of panel conversations in East Africa, focusing on trade and industrialization. On my panel is Hannington Namara, Country Director for Trademark East Africa. Also, Busisiwe Legodi, Chief Executive Officer at CIMERWA, and the Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry, Francois Kanimba. We'll take a short break. More of this after the break. Welcome back. You're still watching the CNBC Africa East Africa debates, this time round focusing on trade and industrialization. On my panel, I've had Hannington Namara, Country Director for Trademark East Africa. I've had also Busisiwe Legodi, Chief Executive Officer at CIMERWA Limited, and the Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry for the Republic of Rwanda, Francois Kanimba. My name is Bonney, Tunya. Let's just kick off this second bit with a little bit focus on the producers, and I like your input, Madam Legodi, on this. Give us a sense of the challenges that you continue to face as producers, and one from social development point of view, because social development always comes to mind when we talk about trade and industrialization and putting up infrastructure and things like that. What are some of the stumbling blocks on the way for you?
Before I go to the stumbling blocks, maybe I need to make it clear that the listeners, they need to realize that CIMERWA is a local manufacturer,
right,
but also a partner with the government, which means we invested in this country through PPC.
Right.
And for us to invest here was because of the policies that we saw in these countries, which were so aligned, and also looking at the development, social development, bilateral agreements that they were there, the ease of doing business. That's what made us to come to Rwanda.
Right.
Yes, just like in any industry, there will be some challenges. But firstly, before I go to challenges, let me compliment the government of Rwanda. If it wasn't for them, that plant of CIMERWA would not be running, because they take it out of their own accord to get us the power generators to be able to run the plant. They are subsidizing it, which shows that the government is serious about industrialization. Yes, there are some challenges. Rwanda is lowly industrialized. So by bringing this high capacity, latest technology plant, we found ourselves with a challenge of having not sufficient skills to run the plant.
Right.
So if you come to CIMERWA, more than 50% of the leadership, I mean, I'm talking about the engineers, they are experts. But what we have done, we have ensured that for each and every position there is a Rwandan.
Right.
Who is shadowed by this expert.
So there's a bit of exchange of...
yes, because we don't want to continue like that, because we started from a 0 point. So, but we want to bring Rwandans along. It's a process. It doesn't take a year to develop a process engineer.
Right.
You need at least 2-3 years, which means it's an investment. So now you need to bring up the skills. On the social side, Rwanda is one country where people, they know where they come from. The one thing that I compliment the Rwanda people is that with CIMERWA and not having even money, I mean, they just spoke most of the things you don't even need to have money.
Right.
We are running 3 key projects on the community currently. One is environmental sustainability. These are women doing TEF blocks. Now they can earn their own salary. We've made the furniture for the new plant. We didn't buy them from China. So I'm giving this a challenge to every minister to say, when you see that guy on that corner trying to make a furniture and you import your furniture from China, what does it say about your morals?
Right.
So that is what CIMERWA we have told ourselves. We'll never ever go out and buy a bed or buy a table. We are making everything local.
Right.
Our local people are doing that. We have also started with the children, teaching them how to knit and all that. There are women who are making clothes. I mean, I'm wearing clothes from Bugarama, believe it or not. This can be exported,
Right.
good quality. As an industry, it's not only about selling a bag of cement. We have to look beyond
Right.
the bag of cement. Because if we're not going to make a change in this country,
Right.
because I think that was the reason why PPC invested here, was to make sure that Rwanda grows industrially as a continent, but we also make an impact to the people of Rwanda.
Right.
It doesn't help that the shareholder, we take the dividends, we go and all that, but the local people around us, they don't grow.
They also must develop.
Yes.
Right.
We are running a school, which we pay teachers, build it ourselves. We run a clinic, which is a hospital. We are paying the staff. It's because we want to support the government of Rwanda to grow. Because we have realized that we are a continent. And usually, we allow other countries to come and dictate to us how to do things, instead of us growing ourselves. We were talking about a cheap bag of cement from outside. Yes, they bring it here and drop here. What are they bringing to Rwanda? Nothing. But I have to pay for teachers. I have to pay for nurses.
Right.
So that is why somewhere my cost might seem to be a little bit high. But it's because I've got obligations.
Right.
I want to make a change.
Interesting. Let me just bring Hannington, because you've worked around this whole trade and social development. And I'd like to bring also a challenge and an issue she mentioned, trade and gender. How do we ensure that our women folk are part of this process, that we're not just industrializing and growing and we leave out the women and we only wait whenever we have an NGO to set up in the locality to promote them? How then do we promote local producers to not only grow from that social point of view, but also to carry along a very important constituency of women?
Yeah, thank you very much. We have been, I think, and we actually aim to be one of the trade vehicles in East Africa or on the African continent that does promote inclusive trade. A key component of that, particularly in the informal sector and around where trade happens, is around the borders and and the ports. We have been running programs, what we call it Women and Trade.
Right.
But we've also been working with partners, government of Rwanda, particularly here, to mainstream gender on all the policies that government of Rwanda is working on for inclusive growth and therefore inclusive trade. The items that remain to be worked on is how many women or how women, the constituency of women actually benefit from the dividends of that trade.
Right. Just benefiting, also being players in the space.
Yes, yes.
Right.
But being part of it, but also the benefits trickling down to most of.
Let me just bring it back, Madam Legodi. You're a woman business leader in this space. What is the role of the women in this? Because women have been relegated to say, let them stay somewhere. Once we develop, they will benefit. How do we ensure that they're part of the process?
Yes, I think for me as a woman, I'm a driver of women gender. The people might not like it, but that's the way it is.
That's what it is.
And I make it clear, I belong to the International Women's Forum. So when I arrived at CIMERWA, we had only 3 women in the plant, like where we called operations. Now we've got 20%. We moved from 3% to 20%. 3 of my operators in the control room are women. I have a woman in the mine now who's running the mine. It's doable. it doesn't mean we are women. We cannot do what men can do.
Right.
The only problem might be for me to lift a 50 kg bag of cement. Please, I can't.
Absolutely.
But I can do the rest.
Right.
Yes.
So we even have a scope of looking at positions where they have been looked at as men's position. Now we are starting to put women. These big machines now are driven by women.
Exactly.
And they're doing extremely well because now we are becoming efficient.
Right. What is stopping other players? Because CIMERWA might have a very good experience in that space. But across Africa, across East Africa, we've seen a lot of local companies manufacturing of whatever kind in whatever sector. But women are not a key part of this. What is stopping them? What is this barrier?
I think the barrier is because as women go up, we are responsible to pull other women up. If we are not pulling other women up, most of the men, but remember, I'm a product of a man. I was developed by a man to be where I am.
Right.
So it was a man who understood the woman gender that now we need to bring in women. So the subject still need to be preached. I don't think it has sinked in.
Right.
There are places where when you arrive as a woman, like when people say the CEO of CIMERWA, they call me Mr. because they expect to see a man.
Yes.
We need to change that mindset as leaders to make sure that we start developing around ourselves those who can take over. But also, what I've realized with women, when women are up there, they become so powerful that they want to drag everybody down who is a woman. So we need to get women to understand that if we want to get a better world, we need to pull other women so that we've got enough constituency.
Right.
I think the government of Rwanda has done that very well.
Especially
The
from Parliament.
only parliament that has got 64% representation of women.
Right.
What more can we ask for? So to me, it gave me a courage to say, I can utilize more women as much as I want in this country. And nobody, I think, will come and say, Busi, now you're overdoing it. Because I feel by the time I live here, I should have at least 40% women in the blood. But those men think I'm crazy. So, but let's see how it goes.
Honorable Minister, I know you could just weigh in on the issue of how do we develop trade as far as trade and gender is concerned, and then we'll shift gears to the integration question.
No, absolutely. I think it's very important I chip in to talk about this gender issue as far as economic development is concerned. We know very well that Africa, in general, traditionally, our culture reflected a very strong gender inequality. And don't expect dramatic change if there is no strong leadership will for this to happen. What is happening in Rwanda is simply a leadership conviction that this has to be totally broken down. And we've been implementing a number of programs and strategy from different angles to make sure that women empowerment is really mainstreamed within our comprehensive development agenda. And now we start really to yield results. Any kind of economic sector you go today, you will be surprised actually women are the best entrepreneurs. We are registering in different sectors. Talking about the cross-border trade, which is one of the key programs the Ministry of Trade and Industry is implementing now. More than 70% of the traders are women, and we are implementing an empowerment program to make sure these women not only are empowered to do trade better than they used to be, but also even get the necessary resources to increase their capacity actually to contribute to address the trade deficit of this country. And this is happening.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. I think we needed more women in this panel to push this agenda. Gentlemen and lady, I'd like us to shift the focus a little bit, even as we focusing on Rwanda, to talk about we cannot industrialize as Rwanda in isolation. We have to interact with the region. Hannington, you work on the borders, and you've said your work is mainly ensuring that the corridors are working efficiently. Give us a sense of what are the benefits of a truly integrated East Africa as far as industrialization is concerned.
Good, thank you very much. I think the question now of trade facilitation is moving a bit to trade development. With the result that trade does not just happen on the corridors only, it actually has to do with what comes to the corridors, and therefore looking at production-related items, right, looking at issues of competitiveness, looking at which sectors, which country has comparative advantage as compared to the other countries in the region. There are also issues to do with economies of scale. How do we actually work together as East Africans to create East African value chains? In some cases, you have SMEs, particularly in the case of Rwanda, that are still weak in terms of financial muscle, in terms of market access, in terms of production capacity. Right. How do we create business linkages with sister companies in the region that are in the same value chain to actually create significant economies of scale and can actually start competing at continental level, right, and international level. Right. So we see issues moving away from trade facilitation to trade development, and getting an understanding and cracking those items, whether from a policy point of view or working with private sector to actually undertake the investments, right, that are going to go that direction and create competitive advantage for East African companies. Right.
Mr. Minister, probably a direct question would be, what is the role or the place of Rwanda as far as regional and international trade treaties are concerned? Because simply we cannot industrialize and do trade if we are not aligned into blocks that make sense. What is the role of Rwanda in this?
Well, part of our vision is to build Rwanda as an open country. We are small in size, but in terms of market, we have done, in my view, what should have been extremely important for this country to make sure our market is borderless. And that's the reason why this country is very proactive in pushing the integration agenda, right, either through the East African Community, COMESA, now the tripartite. But even looking globally, as you know, East Africa is concluding now agreement with other blocs like the European Union. We've signed now the economic partnership agreements. And Rwanda has always been very proactive to make sure this happen, because we are convinced the only way you can attract significant investment in industrial sector, the market, the size of the market matters a lot. Right. And to come back to the question you raised previously about why Rwanda is investing or developing this economic zone. We are developing this economic zone because we know this is one of the key incentives to attract investors who are looking for the whole region where Rwanda is. One of the key incentives an industrialist is looking for is to access easily a fully serviced land very quickly and at a reasonable cost. Our program to develop industrial parks is exactly fitting within this vision. And we have started now, for example, registering industries which came to Rwanda to take advantage of our high-ranking good governance, right, stability and security to establish here, but looking to the market around Rwanda, not necessarily here in Rwanda. And this is happening simply because the regional integration is facilitating this exercise.
Right. You mentioned that, and obviously there's a lot of effort that has been done in respect to that, looking at the Northern Corridor Integration Project. Right. But still there's some challenges as far as that is concerned. One of the key issues, and I'm sure probably Madam Legodi would have more info on that, is the issue of standardization of products across the region.
Yes.
From where you sit, Minister, what is the right direction that we should be taking as far as this whole standardization question is concerned?
Standardization is critical, and I can tell you currently as we speak, one of the comparative advantages Rwanda has in the region is to have established a credible standard board. a product from Rwanda with a NES mark is trusted wherever you go in East Africa, because people know the Rwanda Standard Board doesn't play with the safety and the quality of products. When they issue their certificate, it has a value.
How do we get Kenya and Tanzania and Ethiopia to agree to a standard that will allow CIMERWA to move their products across the borders without...
No, you know that at regional level we have a forum to harmonize these standards, and this has quite happening very well in East Africa. I don't know how many standards we have been able to harmonize, but at the same time as I speak, we recognize that it's not always smooth, even when we have agreement on the harmonization of standards. Sometimes when products go across the border, they still have problems in some countries, but I think it's a question of time and dialogue. These kind of non-tariff barriers are definitely going to be removed.
Madam CEO, this is something that I'm sure you've interacted with. What are the quick gains as far as this is concerned? How do you go about this whole standardization process?
Okay, the quick gains for us currently, I mean, I'm very close to the to the minister, so I don't think that is a surprise. I mean, we are looking at a lot of things that will make sure that whatever comes to Rwanda is of a standard that is acceptable to Rwanda.
Right.
A simple thing like we as CIMERWA, we committed that we'll pack our cement in paper because we respect the environment. We don't want to pollute the country. But if you look at the imports, they bring their cement in polypropylene. So what is it that we can do to make sure that whatever comes in this country is packed in a proper paper? Because we are environmental friendly, and Rwanda is clean, and we want it to remain like that. We don't want it spoiled. So those are small things. You might see them as small, but the impact is so huge if you look at them in a bigger scale. Also, the testing of product, as indicated, they are our Rwanda Bureau standards. They are very, very close to testing those products that are coming. That is why, like, there will be questions with others. I mean, last year there was one plant that was closed because of quality, which is good. The main challenge that we might have, if we are not careful, is cements which are from, like, the Pakistanians and all that. We need to get against those, because those, should they flood your market, then it becomes difficult to stop them. But the Rwanda government has done a lot of job around that. Though in the entire East Africa, it's a problem, but for Rwanda it's not yet a challenge. So we are quite protected on that side, because our RSP is really looking into that.
Hannington, it's easy to have standardized measures for big players like CIMERWA and Rallyroa and all these guys. But also we have to understand that Rwanda's industrialization journey is also driven by the SMEs who are manufacturing in the villages and in the small areas. For them, it's particularly hard to get their products across the borders. How do we improve performance and level the playing field, not just for the big players, but also for the smaller SMEs that are trying to manufacture handicrafts and things like that?
It's absolutely critical that happens, because we want to see at a regional level, first of all, if I may start from a regionalization point of view, standards have been used to either achieve a competitive advantage for some companies over others, and some have been used as restrictions in the regional markets. But from what we see in Rwanda, what can be done for the SMEs to ensure that they also take advantage of the standard infrastructure and quality infrastructure that Rwanda has invested in to become a source of competitive advantage. We've rolled out a program through the ministry and the Standards Board to actually have an uptake of private sector companies or SMEs to be the drivers of that and take advantage of the quality environment and use that to fetch a premium on the market. Certainly it is not that easy. but working with them from start to show them how important it is to actually position themselves on the market as the producers of standard goods.
Right.
For example, in the food sector, we're working with the entire hotel chain to ensure that they are food safety certified, and that has an implication in the tourism business. Because if tourists come here and they know they will eat safe food and everything is okay, that does create a competitive advantage for this tourism sector.
Right.
So we're rolling out a program in partnership with the Standards Board here to actually work with private sector, and particularly the SMEs, the small-scale producers, in every value chain you can imagine, to ensure that they, from the onset, in their processes, embed a standard infrastructure and culture that will see them go to the market with a proposition that is pitches a premium. But yes, every country in East Africa needs to do that, for example. If that happens, then we can have a regulatory environment that is better, engage from each other. We see a lot of energy at the heads of state level, for example, in the Northern Corridor, to actually buy into this and create an environment that respects quality, that respects standards, and maintains that as a competitive advantage. Right. There is a program that is currently running to go beyond harmonization and create what we call mutual recognition agreements, that they each other recognize quality marks as of standard enough. But that, of course, creates presupposes that every country has the infrastructure capability to test and certify and develop standards that are going to support competitiveness. And we're working with that as well to ensure that at least from a standpoint of each nation having the quality, the capability to produce good standards, and then they can mutually recognize each other on the market. And for private sector, that is a very good environment.
Gentlemen and lady, we just have 5 minutes to wrap this conversation. So as part of your closing comments, which I'll give each of you about 1 minute and 10 seconds, I'd like us to just hear your thoughts about also the whole conversation about the fourth industrialization and whether indeed Rwanda is ready for this. There have been peddling fears that we'll see a lot of our population sent home because of the onset of robotics and machinery and mechanizing our industries. I'm sure Madam Legodi, you will not want to see your women who you worked hard for being sent home. So let's start again from Hannington, coming this way as we give us your closing comments. What are your thoughts about how prepared Rwanda is for the fourth industrialization?
The issue of industrialization, I think, is absolutely critical. If we're going to get Rwandans jobs and off-the-farm jobs like the Vision 2020 says, how else are we going to do that if we don't leverage industrialization in every sector? When I look at agriculture, for example, if you take agriculture to another level, mechanization to value addition, it will require an industrialization platform, and that is the only way we can create wealth and value for our people. So to me, industrialization, much as we have hurdles here and there, it's doable, it must be done. Now to that level where it starts displacing our people in the jobs, we still have a long way to go. And I think that it's a balance.
We shouldn't worry too much about it now.
No.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I think you should not worry that it will displace people because we are starting from zero. Exactly. So it will actually create opportunities. Rwanda believes in the power of technology, which drives production, makes sure we are efficient, and also ensuring that we produce goods that are of good quality, and also we can reach the market. I mean, for us, we see it practically now, because we have moved from a 100,000 tons plant to a 600,000 tons plant. The technology is very high. We have got a lot of support. I mean, we also have like the local companies who are actually running our own systems to make sure that we can reach the market better. We test everything in the plant. It's technology. But it's because Rwanda has put a platform for us to able to do that. Now we are at the position where now we are moving our product to the market. Now we are talking about the market and the customer services. Now we can reach our customer even through cell phones. Yes. 4G, our customers can log into their computers and see where their product is. Right. So to us, I feel Rwanda is definitely have a power to move industrialization through even digital methods to the level that they want to. It will be up to them.
All right.
Yes.
Finally, Minister.
So I have the same views with my colleagues, and in my view, this concern about the potential negative impact of economic digitalization on job creation, I think it's not a real one, particularly for countries which still the level of technology is extremely low. Actually, I have a different impression that actually the digitalization, the advancement in the ICT is creating jobs.
Yes.
There are some sectors where 2-3 years ago there was no idea about what should be done. Now the digitalization is creating a whole economy in some of the sectors.
Right.
And when you look at, for example, let's say financial services, and some of the products which have been developed actually have created a huge amount of jobs, which should not exist if these technologies have not been introduced.
Right.
And I see this happening in other sectors, agriculture, industry, small and medium enterprises, as we have been talking about them. In my view, the balance of the digitalization of the economy in terms of job creation, I have a feeling it's going to be more positive rather than negative as people thought.
Right. We'll leave it there. Many thanks to my esteemed panel. You've been watching the Rwanda-focused debate on trade and industrialization and what are the opportunities and threats to truly industrialize Rwanda. On my panel, I've been speaking to Hannington Namara, Country Director of Trademark East Africa. I've also had Busisiwe Legodi, Chief Executive Officer at CIMERWA Limited, and the Honorable Minister Francois Kanimba, the Minister of Trade and Industry. My name is Bonney. Tunya. Goodbye for now.